Welcome back to Ignite Your Power from Within. Confidently discover your potential, turn obstacles into opportunities, and create extraordinary success in your life. I'm your host, Missy Beck, and today we have Sarah Jane Farrell on our show. So Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Missy. It's great to be here. We're living in such great, interesting times. I think this is just beautifully, divinely timed. So thank you for inviting me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being on. So I want to start by you sharing with the audience who you are and what you're up
to. That's an interesting question. And I think one that probably I've been diving into a lot more deeply as things have sort of come to almost like a re-entry phase in, who am I? In relation to this virus, in relation to a changing world where everything we know and who we think we are is actually not that important in the big scheme of things. So who am I is an ever-changing question, but I really feel like I'm here to serve from a place of being born and growing up in a country that was war-torn. I grew up in Africa, in Zimbabwe, during a very violent bush war. And I've always had, as a highly sensitive being and someone that's been very intuitive as a child, felt like I never really had place, that I belonged. So my work is really around helping people to trust, trust that they're enough, and also trust in their innate wisdom, in the body's wisdom, to know that it knows what to do in times of crisis. It knows how to keep us healthy, and also to, overcome trauma by really befriending the nervous system. Because I know there's always some war that we're fighting, whether that's energetically, mentally, emotionally, physically. War is something that I know from the inside out, in the environment that I was born into, but also my internal environment of always sort of being at war with myself as not being enough. So that's really what I stand for, and what I'm here to support other people in really trusting, that we've got this, regardless of what's going on the outside. It's that internal trust and knowing, to really dig deep and go there.
Yeah. And, no coincidence, like you and I were talking before we hit record about the timing of our interview. And, I'm not sure exactly in which order this interview will come onto the series just yet, but I have shared with the audience how, unfortunately, I lost several interviews to what I'm loving with psychology habit. And so here we are re-recording this interview. Today is Thursday, March 19th. God, it's almost hard to keep track of the date amidst the world we're living in right now. And here you are talking about knowing what it is to be at war either with yourself or the dichotomy of being literally at war and everything in between. And we are essentially at war with the coronavirus, with disease, with a virus that is plaguing many people. So I would love for you to share how you see what's happening in the world right now in terms of the work that you do, and maybe offer some tools, strategies, mindset principles around what's happening right now.
I love that you asked that, because I think it can take so many different directions, and I know we only have a certain amount of time. Yeah. But I think really what I have been called to speak more to is, first of all, the interesting power of language, the way we spell things into being, and also knowing that our bodies follow the mind. We forget how omnipotent we are, that we are part of nature. And that this is an incredible opportunity for us to look at some of these, what I call emotional psychic viruses, the places where we're not present. It's kind of like a narcissist. When you think of a virus or a psychic virus, it infects us very slowly over time. And it really keeps us from moving forward. And I think nature is going through a huge reset to help us, to literally shake us awake, because are not going through things like climate change. We're going through a collapse of everything that we once knew. And this is the sort of movement from the 3D to the 5D, where we are in this noumenal space, this between time, and where it can be so dangerous again. In looking at, we can be paranoid about what's happening, or we can see, wow, what an incredible opportunity, and be proactive, pronoia rather than paranoid. To look at where have we infected ourselves with our own limitations? Where are we holding back on our own power because we have picked up energetic addictions from ancestral or intergenerational or familial or cultural trauma that hasn't been resolved? And nature, again, being part of nature, is saying to us, here you go, here's an opportunity for you to really go deep, get quiet, cut out all the distractions, the addictions to workaholism, the addictions to, achieving and accumulating wealth, and the things that actually, when you look at this as affecting everybody, it has the potential to affect us in a good way if we can slow down enough and actually use this time really, really well to look at who am I being? Back to your question you asked in the beginning, to look at where is the addiction that I have to whatever that is, numbing out, checking out, overworking, drinking too much, eating too much, starving myself, whatever it is for you. You just have to choose your ism, but to look at it as everything has a hidden purpose, including the consciousness of this virus. Wow. The parasitic part of it is how we feed ourselves into the fear. So, we have to look at how we're responding to these energy gaps and these emotional black holes that are arising from our own energy trauma, our energy centers that are perhaps blocked, where we've been protecting and defending ourselves to keep ourselves safe. And here we are again, back like in Second World War, I think was the last time there was this kind of collective consciousness that's being shaken awake to look at, okay, where have I created or hijacked my own ability to create more and give more back to the world as part of nature? Mm-hmm. So I know that was a lot, but there's a lot in there, isn't there? To look at, where we can't do much, Missy. And I know we spoke about this before. We can't be the best that we're being if we're stuck on Maslow's lower rung, in the hierarchy of things. If you are fighting your survival, or you are at war with something that you can't see or that you could see, there's no way to access that second chakra, to access that beautiful creative second chakra, which is the place where we invent cures for diseases and where we create connections and where we find a sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. We have to really start to look at what creates safety. Well, our thoughts. So we need to get back to a space, I believe, of how do I create my own safety in this, and see this as an opportunity to befriend the parts I fear most, which include the virus of the mind. The mystery schools, the ancient wisdom talk about Watiko as the virus of the mind. No other species on the planet functions from that space of for or against. It's just, how can I be the best that I can possibly be?
Mm-hmm. So along those lines of tapping into second chakra and creativity, and many of us are home, which I believe sort of being given this gift of time. We all live really busy lives, and now the universe has some bigger plan of stop and slow down, or whatever you believe in, however you want to see this. And I'm not making light of coronavirus for the audience out there. I'm simply looking at the silver lining, the blessings and the learnings that we can take away from this. And so knowing that a lot of people are home, knowing that a lot of people have that opportunity to maybe calm that inner voice, or to look at the thoughts that are coming up. Because look, something that is often really healing is spending time with friends and family and community. And obviously that's been taken away from us right now. So what tools might you give to somebody who's looking to drop into their thoughts and rather than being at war with their thoughts, maybe coming to a little bit more peace?
Yeah, great question. And again, you know, I think it starts with what I think I'm offering as my free gift to everyone that's listening, you know, which is to come back to the heart and what you touched on, you know, just the languaging that's being used, the social isolation, you know, it's creating more separation.
Mm-hmm.
And we need eyes on each other. You know, we need eyes on us to say, you can rest now, I've got your back. So I think that, you know, part of the new technologies is becoming more heart-centered by returning to yourself, so that you no longer feel numb or disconnected because you know you did something wrong or you could have done, you know, living from the place of past reference points or going so far into the future, you can't be present. So I think, you know, knowing that isolation, we know what it does. You know, babies die when they're not touched.
Yeah.
We are a touch-starved nation. We have lost touch with nature, the nature of us, and what we need to belong or what we need to feel connected. So I think that it's very personal, but it's also can be really, really simple. And that is reach out and touch someone. You know, what if you could know that through the kindness of the words that you're spelling into being, the alchemy, right? The sovereignty of being your own creator.
Mm-hmm.
What if you could be greater than whatever this is?
Yeah.
Because, you know, science is catching up with that. We're proving that we can and are moment to moment without even conscious thought, which often stops the process of healing. Our bodies are morphing and shape-shifting and changing and healing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we could be aware rather than afraid and start looking at what we're spelling into being that's either feeding the, you know, are we either going to feed the collective of fear and isolation and separation and defeatism and that we're at war, right? Rather than being pro and asking, okay, how can this virus help me to be better than I was yesterday? And I think it's already happening. We're seeing the ripple effects of generosity and kindness and what it means to be human, a human being. Again, you know, what it means to be part of a tribe, as part of a village. And I think this has leveled the playing fields, hasn't it? You know, there's no ranking anymore. We're the only ones that rank. No other species in nature does that. And just learning from nature, learning from the horses. You know, I was watching the birds outside. They haven't stopped singing because there's a human crisis. They're singing because they can. They don't stop singing because their feathers are wet. You know, I think again, it's just like really coming back to looking at what are your values? Mm-hmm. Who do you want to be? If this is your living legacy, keep living. Yeah. Be present with what is. Because when you can see and you feel and you can love and honor and acknowledge the heart of who you came here to be, really viscerally feeling it in the body and in your breath, all those energetic addictions and those trauma patterns that are tied to the story of what this is, the story of where you've come from, and any kind of past external emotional experience, everything starts to dissipate. It really is about being given this amazing opportunity, which encompasses what it means to love, to be afraid. You know, it's just like, don't pretend you're not. Don't resist fear. Don't resist discomfort. Lean into the discomfort. Ask the hard questions and be really, really honest with yourself about how you are wanting to hold space with compassion as the safe and silent witness for not only your own child parts that are afraid, because I know a lot of my clients have been saying, gosh, you know, this is triggering a lot of things that I thought I'd cleared around, you know, when my daughter nearly died when she had mumps, or, you know, when I nearly died on the operating table. It's going to trigger all of this because, again, as you were saying, the blessing in the lesson, the blessings are not to dismiss that this isn't could be a crisis. It is a crisis if you allow it to beat you.
Mm-hmm.
So, be aware of what is available to you. Is the most important thing to do. It is about the being, not the doing, as you were saying. It's random acts of kindness. It's trusting that we're going to be okay.
Yeah. And I mean, look, there's certain pieces we can't control, right? The financial market is likely going to be a mess for a while to come, and we're all in it. And going back to something you were talking about in terms of social isolation, and I so much, I mean, those words in and of itself are so powerful.
Yeah.
Yet so daunting. When you think about it, not just babies, but you think about our prison system, and the harshest punishment you can have is solitary confinement. We're social beings. We're meant to be with people.
Yeah.
And, I've seen so many memes and posts and things going around social media, and 99.9% of them have all been about humankind stepping up and leading with love and generosity and really wanting to connect. I'm just thinking of something I reposted yesterday. It was almost like a little calendar board, and it was like each day had a challenge, and it was like connect with a new friend, connect with either your father or a father-like figure in your life, or and I really want to encourage our viewers to take on those challenges, to do those things, to connect, to reach out, to use this time to have the conversations you've been holding back on having, to connect with that person you've been playing phone tag with. And, my hope is that while we're all in this isolation, if you will, and we're all so addicted. I mean, look, we're using technology now. Granted, we're using it for good, but we're all so addicted. Our phones are that maybe on the other end of this, when we are able to be in connection with one another, that perhaps what it might create is greater presence, so that when we go out to dinner and we look at the table next to us, or even around our own dinner table, we don't see everyone like this. Instead, we see people actually like you and I right now making connection and really appreciating those in-person connections because they've been taken from us. And so that's my hope personally.
I so agree with you. I think when you're hot-led, you heal. And when you come home to yourself, you start to surrender to all the false versions of you, and you sort of be the light for others, to do the same. And I mean, I speak of this all the time, and the funny thing is that I always find it really curious in human nature how we only tend to learn when we're really pushed to that level of survival. And that's, there's no disputing that's how we learn as a species, and we grow and evolve. And, my wish is very similar to yours, is that I hope that we all come out of this, that it's not just, business as usual, that this was a temporary glitch in the matrix and we forget about it, or we don't use this opportunity to expand and grow and evolve and be the best human beings that our animal friends know we can be. And it's just really interesting, because I think when we start to look in the contrast, I think for me it's just been about lengthening the pause. I'm very introverted anyway, so for me, I love the concept of nesting, of cocooning, of nurturing, and I suppose I am very privileged that I've set my life up, that I'm able to work like this, and still be in touch with every, with nature, with the rest of the world. But I think that this sort of enforced isolation, as you said, again, going back to the words, it almost invokes fear. Whereas if we can look at this as, I'm choosing to make the best of this retreat. It's a retreat. It's not enforced if you're choosing to use this time in a good way. there's no judgment or resentment when we kind of can start to change things and look at the duality and the contrast of it, to look at, okay, I can choose this or I can choose that, and I can choose everything in between. And again, I think it's a beautiful space to be really honest and vulnerable with yourself, to say, you know what, I'm pendulating from fear when you mentioned, oh, you know, this is going to affect how we all create money. And then I can go, yes, and for the last 5 years, I've been questioning my peers in life transformation and healing on my discomfort of the incongruencies of how we've been creating money in this industry that should be light and heart driven, that things needed to change. And it was just like, oh, there you go. I've been asking for this. Now here it is. How am I going to work this to my advantage and to the betterment of everybody else? So I think it's to be, I think, humbled, and also to remember our humility in all of this.
Absolutely.
And to see it as a gift, all of it.
Yeah, and you know, you said something about humankind learns when we're I don't know what your exact words, but I'm gonna paraphrase and say sort of when we're pushed up against our edges. You know, part of the title of the show is turning obstacles into opportunities. Again, no coincidence, right? And I believe that at least in my life, when I look at and I love the term blessings and lessons combined there. And when I look at the blessings, if you will, that I've had in my life, they've all come, the biggest ones have come as a result of the difficulties that or the traumas that I've faced. And so, again, does that mean that I want to go out and attract trauma? No, but that's part of the human experience. So how do you take these experiences, these traumas, these obstacles, and create opportunity? So I love that you said that, because it's so fitting with the title of the show as well. I'd love to kind of, I don't want to say shift gears because it's all about, but I know, Sarah Jane, that you do a lot of work with animals, specifically with horses. And I know that there's so much to be learned. You've spoken a lot about nature. I would love to know how you see, given the work that you've done with animals, the sort of parallels to the human experience, and what we can really learn from the animal kingdom as a whole, horses. I know you spent a lot of time with elephants, and kind of speak into that for our audience, because I find that work that you do so fascinating. So I would be interested to not address that in our interview.
Gosh, where do we even start? You know, I think, again, when you sort of look at how gently animals tread on the earth, you know, that they waste nothing, that there is this unspoken connection with elephants, as big as they are, how vulnerable they are, and that their only kind of threat is humanity, but also horses that have endured and opened up territories and done so much with people. You know, we could look at dogs the same, but if you just sort of look at prey animals, they're very, very sensitive to anything that isn't level on the plane. You know, it's that morphogenetic field that Rupert Sheldrake talks about, where everything is flat, and if there's something out of order and one sees it, the whole collective sees it and responds to it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is trusting the spidey senses, trusting the body, the body that carries us, but also the body of us as a collective, to stop trying to figure things out from the head. You know, animals don't think about things the way that we do. They feel it, so it's a felt sense. It's just very somatic. And I just think that all animals, but especially prey animals, they they're just so in touch with the body, actually. I'm just trying to kind of feel into this, but I think we spend so much of our time not being present. Again, coming back to how can you create an omnipotent life? How can you give well if you're not present? Animals are always present. They're never in regret. They're never in the past. They're never in the future. They're always present with what is. And I think that for me, when I start to pay really close attention to, that animals navigate the world because they're not so heavily impacted by our sort of human culture, that started to proliferate sort of patterns of trauma that keep repeating themselves. It's like, well, why do we have this recurring pattern that we don't learn from wars, and we don't learn from, big events that affect all of us, like this one will, this will change the history forever. And so as a result of my sort of desperate desire to get out of my own struggle and my own loop, I am always looking at those incredible wild elephants and rhino and lions, and of course my horse teachers, to really reflect on how do we do that, which is, coming to your question, is we have to restore a sense of trust in ourselves. And how do we do that with others if we don't have it with ourselves? So, in my mind, one of the things that I've come to see, spending a lot of time around animals, is realizing that they are in what we call rest and digest in parasympathetic nervous function for the majority of their day.
Yeah.
So much of the time, animals are resting and relaxing and sleeping and being curious and eating and playing and just engaging with one another. And there's not typically a very high level of stress. Certainly when you watch animal documentaries and you hear the person narrating the events, we often try to narrow it based on what we know, or what we, the way that we think an experience might feel. But when we put it through our human lens and we talk about the incredible struggle and the suffering that they're having, and how they might be starving, or, there's been a terrible drought in Africa. There's a shortage of habitat, loss of habitat because of humans. But when you actually sit down and you really submerge yourself with all of these sort of preconceived ideas for what animals might be experiencing, what you see is this incredible amount of relaxation and interconnectedness, and really healthy boundaries too. They're very direct and they're very open communications, and they know how to just simply be themselves. And I think, again, I just want to honor your question to me of who am I at the beginning of this show, because it's a question that is uncomfortable, I think, for many of us. And there's not a cultural narrative in which there's something animals need to do, and in order to be good enough to belong, or that they somehow have to achieve a certain level of objective in their lives. They just don't have that same kind of internal narrative or stories, the social stories that humans have, that I think does limit us from really living into our legacy and being okay with who we are. And I think that's just, that sort of space again that animals invite us into, is just dropping into this presence, into this deeper place of well-being for a much larger portion of our day than the average human does. And again, coming back to this incredible opportunity of retreating into our nests,
Yeah.
of looking at that, not with the dread or the resentment or the fear of missing out, or that we're losing something, but rather from a place of, oh my gosh, what an incredible place to be receiving something greater than I could possibly imagine, that allows our nervous system to calm down because we're creating that safety to use our lives well, and get excited again, about the things that we put off because we think we have time. I think that impermanence of something like this, and the fragility of our makeup as human beings, as these tender, fragile animal bodies, and how hard they work to keep us healthy, is just a beautiful opportunity to just reset, reset and review, how we want to move forward from this.
Yeah. Yeah, so well said. And that's right. As we know, tomorrow is not a guarantee. And a lot of us live our life that way. And, obviously it's the age old question, like, how do you live, how do you live that balance between tomorrow's not a guarantee and then that fatalistic of there isn't going to be a tomorrow. So finding that balance. So I so appreciate you and your time. Can you share with the audience where you are, your location right now, and just give us like a 30-second what the is there? And I don't mean actual climate, I mean
Yeah, so right now I'm in the UK. I have a daughter that's back home in South Africa. I have a sister in America. I have family all over the world, and of course everyone is my family because we're human. But yeah, it's to me, and maybe that's just because I'm choosing it, but I find an incredible sense of peace. There is this excitement more than there is these panic moments of tapping into the global collective of, as you were saying, loss of livelihood, and the food rush and the toilet paper story, and I've had a couple of good giggles with my mom, who I'm staying with at the moment, about that. It's just, again, coming back to the animals, and our ancestors, when we had running water, and beautiful soft leaves that were mulching, we weren't looking for toilet paper.
Nope.
There's no shortage in nature. So yeah, I've sort of been playing very much the observer role in all of this. Again, from a very privileged place of knowing that I have a roof over my head and enough nourishment in my stomach, as well as love in my life from my mother. But yeah, it just seems like there's a peace. There's a sense of peace and stillness out there, which I find incredibly exciting, and also that I'm open to getting more curious about, as I sort of speak to people on a one-on-one basis around the world, and hold space for them to just be able to be with whatever they're feeling and really feel it in their bodies. So yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting.
Well, I'm so appreciative of your time. Round two of our interview.
Yes.
And I would love for you to just share with our audience where they could find you on the internet. And I know you had a free gift you wanted to offer. You kind of made mention of it. So I'd love to close out by you sharing that.
Absolutely, and just as a sort of a spontaneous extra add of generosity, I would love to also offer people a very beautiful, very short breathwork exercise that comes out of my breathwork program. It's a somatic breath, really to help people to stay in their bodies and use these powerful lungs that are supposedly under threat, to really strengthen their own immunity. And of course, what goes so beautifully with that is, we have to heal on all levels of body, mind, and spirit, that sort of holy trinity of the heart space. So my offer is a little fun 5 magic little words that we can spell into being. So really getting aware and mindful of how we're using the potency of language as a frequency of healing or harming. So just 5 little words, 5 little videos, and 5 basic little words where we can really get back into the essence of being the best humans we can be again.
And where can we find you online?
Okay, so I'm very simple, sarahjanefarrell.com. You can find me there, and on all the normal social media, at YouTube, SoundCloud. I have a ton of free resources all over the place. So I hope people will dive in and use this time well to just connect heart to heart, send that love out in the world. Because when we do our work, when we do our inner work, we're changing the whole tapestry that we're all kind of weaving our own web in. So I just want to say thank you to you for holding this space, and also thank you to everyone that will be listening to this and adding to this beautiful tapestry.
Yeah. Sarah Jane, thank you so much, and
It's my pleasure.
Stay healthy, and with our collective consciousness, I believe anything is possible. So
absolutely, I'm excited for what lies in front of us in this next present moment. So thank you, Missy.
Take care.
All right, take care. Bye.